Let's start.
But it's also a reflection too, was it economically? Because around this time period too, for people during COVID, it was a best and worst time because people couldn't afford to really go anywhere, or they had no health insurance to pay for, not only to get themselves better for the medication, or if you died, or if a loved one died, you couldn't pay for their funerals, you couldn't do any of that stuff. And this was also a time where the presidency, where they implemented 0% interest on student loans or even loans in general, because like people couldn't pay them, especially if you couldn't work. People were out of jobs. People couldn't support themselves or their families. Bills were piling up. Credit, people had to rely on credit to even just to survive. It was a window to the world and also to the medical field too, because like how the COVID pandemic affected them, it damn near almost collapsed the entire medical field, because like the massive pile of people that were coming in every single day, the stress, we were losing more people, not only in doctors and nurses, but also even people in my field too. People were getting burned out. They were getting harassed. They were getting stressed out. And even people who were traveling nurses and traveling technologists, they were getting burned out because the workload and the stress and the psychological toll, it just took a toll on them financially, to the point was like they could barely keep up, no matter how many hours they worked and everything. But it was also a window of opportunity that I took, because I was able to see this, because during that time period, I had a little bit of credit card debt, but I had a lot of student loan debts from St. Peter's and Rutgers too, and also going to school too. I had over $100,000 in student loan debt when I first started at my job in 2018. So pretty much, and during the COVID time, this was a golden opportunity for me. So pretty much while I was working, every week or every 2 weeks, I would put money in to my student loans for St. Peter's and Rutgers. Every single time, I would double the initial payment that I had every time I would get paid. That way it would slowly break down. And also my mom's loan, because she also put in a Parent Plus loan for me to go to school. I not only cleaned up my loan, but hers as well. And within 3 years, because like it was just like a month ago, I celebrated the 4th year. It's been 4 years since I've been student loan debt free, and that's an impact for you, because a lot of young people, that's why a lot of young people around my age or younger, they can't make milestone movements in their life. Like they can't afford their own first car. They can't afford an apartment or a house. They can't build a family. They can't move anywhere. They can't change jobs, because a lot of times you stay in these uncomfortable, toxic environments because you can't afford it. You can't go anywhere else. So now you're stuck in these environments for longer than you had anticipated. So that window of opportunity that I had in the economic space, I used that as a way to get myself out of debt and build up enough money where it's like, when I'm ready to make the big leap, I already have a cushion where if I needed to switch jobs or switch location, I can do that. And COVID also tested people's morality. It made people question themselves and made people question who they spend their time with, who they worked with, and how they saw themselves, like who they listen. I ain't worried about other people. It's like, I'm just worried about me. I was like, no, people need help and all that stuff. COVID really opened your eyes to see how people really thought about other people. And it's like, if they were in these situations, it allowed them to see what they would do in these situations. And it was very telling. And politically too. Politically wise, when you saw people with political views and how they were staunchly against or for something, it really gave you an eye-opening view of who they really were as a person. And those were the 5 factors how COVID really affected me.
Yeah, you hit it on the nail. I'm a big believer that stress and pressure really showcases who you really are when it matters the most. And it's not only about the ethical and moral convictions that you have, but it's more important is the decisions you make. If you remember, I remember people trying to buy hand sanitizers by the pound, reselling them. The same thing with toilet paper. So this puts into perspective that is not a vast majority. It's a small minority that wants to take advantage of the mass majority. And this is, to you, it's critical, because think about it. You have to have a high ethics and moral to want to put yourself on the line first, right? Let's look at it at hospitals at that time were like a war zone.
Exactly.
You were there battling every day. And even though you were burned out, you knew that if you didn't do your job, somebody relied on these test results that needed to be done at a high level and with precision. And you did that. And not only that you did this moral good deed, but at the same time, you were able to take this opportunity to get yourself out of debt, because that's also one of the biggest factors of why Americans are so stressed. That's why one of the biggest reasons why our cortisol levels are high, because of our finances. And I'm very happy you make this decision for yourself, because it was a very healthy decision and a healthy boundary to free yourself from, I would say, the enslavement of being in debt. Because there's a difference between being in debt and having an investment. Your school loan was an investment, but it was a high price to pay for the education. I wanted to ask you this, since we're going in and delving into this. What are your thoughts about one day the United States being where college is completely free for everyone? Because if education has such a high price to pay, many would doubt to go in, because they will be scared of accruing such a debt. What are your thoughts about this topic?
Well, for me, as like college, higher education in the beginning, like most things, it was used as a status symbol. If you went, like, people use going to college as a way, as a status to be able to mingle amongst the higher ups or the elites, to be able to get into certain rooms and network certain people that you normally couldn't do if you just worked a regular 9-to-5 job and everything. But like, as you delve deeper and as our society started to progress more and more, it was more apparent that college opened not only just for like the higher ups, for the elite, but it was also a networking chain for other fields in the world, whether it's the medical field, political world, engineering, the social justice worlds, and the athletics too. It's like, and the psychic world. It opens you to places that you would have never saw if you were just working your regular 9-to-5 in your regular hometown. You never went anywhere else. College is very important because it opens you to a field that you would have never saw before. It allows you to network with people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different languages, and different walks of life that you would have never saw had you just stayed in your regular hometown. And that's very vital. And I feel like now, because when you pushed it now, especially when you put more money into these colleges, unfortunately, college has now become the equivalent of almost getting a high school diploma. Was like, now people's expected, especially when you come from a foreign country where it was almost impossible for you to get higher education. So when you come over to the United States, like, the first thing you want your kids to do is go to college, get that degree, and be a doctor, a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, to make that big buck, because it gets you. For a lot of people, when you're coming out of those countries, it was their main goal was getting out of poverty, and also just to open a window that I could never get you anywhere before, to really be able to grow and prosper and live the dream that I never could. But as time goes on, as progress, especially now when you mix politics into the educational system, now college has become almost like a breeding ground for these political agendas, where people can use your mindset, especially young impressionable minds, against you. They use you as pawns to the point where it feeds their agenda, and they'll go for it every bout. And when you don't fall in line with certain agendas, now guess what happens? Certain governments or state officials start taking funding away from these schools, to the point where, like, now certain aid programs, certain beneficial educational program that you use, or like financial programs that would help low-income students actually get themselves to get through school when they never had money to pay for it themselves. When they start taking away, that's where it gets a little bit tricky now. And now we're starting people now especially in the online world, where they're now starting to talk about two different things: trying to thrive more in the social media diaspora, where they're trying to grow there. Because let's be honest, the internet has become the ultimate equalizer, where now it's like anyone can find a way to make monies in any aspect of the world. You just got to be able to know. You got to be able to have a conversation, talk on the phone, do what we're doing, and just be able to branch out like that and just grow from there. But you had to be consistent with it. And also with trade, you remember before trade, back then it was implemented in the school systems for a decade. But around like the 70s, 80s, they started taking those trade programs out of the schools and started replacing them by going to college and everything, because now it was a status symbol. It was a way to get money back into the states, and also for higher ups too. It was a perpetual cycle wheel that you to gain money in, where the system systems were getting money, but the people were getting poorer and poorer, depending on which field you go into. Let's say, for example, this is an essential job, I feel like, people in social services and education, teachers, but they are not getting paid for the high toll work that they're getting tossed around, especially people with need. Like, it is ridiculous. So education to me is going to change, but how we're changing it, it's a little bit daunting. It's a little bit daunting. So this is why I feel like people in my generation and younger ones who are in college now need to be able to take a stand as and be able to rewrite what's already been going on and not be someone's pawn in a whole game.
I agree with your point of view, because if one thing that provides more stability and a better comprehension of diversity and who we are as a society is having the proper education and the proper resources for the programs that you're talking about. And it's so important too that colleges need to go beyond being a business. And what makes that difference is if we have the proper educational system, but also the competent leaders and competent teachers too. Like, for example, you had an excellent counselor that guided you, that said, I see potential here. Let's take this advantage out of you. And when you have that, I believe that that's what makes a difference. One person makes the difference for another. And once we start understanding the role we play as leaders in society, especially when we acquire more knowledge, is what are we doing with our time to help those that don't have as much knowledge as we do and the wisdom, right? And it goes hand to hand with advocacy. And I know that. Welcome back again, Ethics Skill Podcast, where we explore human experiences. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do not forget our campaign. We are committed to transform your subscriptions into pro bono programs for mental health, so you can free somebody's mind from their traumas and help them heal just by subscribing. Very simple, and it costs absolutely nothing. Help us through this campaign, and we just want to pay forward, not only to our viewers, but for those that can't afford mental health services. Just remember, the statistics are real. Only 4 out of 10 Americans can afford mental health services. So help us change that. Hopefully, we can move the statistics and perhaps move it from 4 to 5 out of 10 people have good mental health services.
Let's start.
To the success of the Unity Brunch, may we continue moving forward together. Cheers!